The string lights along the wooden fence shivered in the dry breeze. On the smoker, a slab of brisket snapped and crackled under a lacquer of fat. Smoke sank into everybody's hair and clothes into the light beer sweating in my hand. Dad stood on the porch step with a crystal glass raised, ash freckles still on his jacket shoulder. He cleared his throat the way a man does when he's used to running a meeting. Here's to Ethan, the one who really saves lives. 30 patients a day in the ER, never quits. My daughter, his smile tilted, like a knife pressed against a tin lid. Our Sydney does support. Paperwork, flight schedules, logistics. Important, sure backstage stuff. The backyard laughed on cue. Mom murmured, "Oh," you, and slid a basket of rolls through the crowd. My brother winked, "Don't mind him," patting my shoulder 3 times like a doctor steadying a patient before stitches. I smiled the muscle memory smile. No point starting a debate while people are chewing and I'm the entertainment. Dad set his glass down, fished a scuffed West Point ring box out of his pocket, some buddies, and bragged to the uncles about our family's respect for proper schooling. I swallowed warm beer and smoke. My flight helmet hung from a camp chair on a jury-rigged coat hook, clean black lining, politely out of place among pumpkin napkins and the butterfly cutouts Mom taped up. I could have run a finger along the rim and told them how JP8 clings to you, how the language of rotor wash teaches balance, even when the ground turns to fog. But out here, the only sound anybody needed was a party running on time. My phone buzzed once in my back pocket. I slid it out, the encrypted app went cobalt blue, white letters sharp as a blade. Scramble 9-line inbound. ETA 20. No spike of panic, just both shoulders settling into a stance my body knows too well. I tapped AC, glanced back at the familiar yard. Mom stacking plates. Ethan telling a cardiac story. Dad laughing too loud. I stood. "I've gotta go," I told the table, then found Mom's eyes. Her brow pinched into the tiny crease I grew up watching. "We haven't cut the cake." Dad caught my wrist, his grip still as strong as it used to be. "Family night matters more than drills. You can skip just this once. It's not a drill." I peeled his fingers off one by one, polite to the edge of impolite. "I'll be back if I can." Ethan stepped in. "Want me to?" I shook my head. I reached for the helmet, felt the hidden 101st Eagle Challenge coin I keep tucked under the liner like a superstition. Cold metal, steadying. I slid the helmet on. The chin strap clicked, a small sound louder than any apology. Crossing the grass, the string lights dragged gold across my boots. Dad called again, no longer giving orders, just that reflex to control. "Sydney, don't spend your whole life supporting. You've got a future." I didn't look back. In a few minutes Mom would tell him to stop, then pack me a plate like always. Tonight it would sit untouched on the counter until late. The car door thumped shut harder than I meant. Engine turned over. The road to I-24 was ink dark. The LED billboards blinked last month's ads. I let local radio cover the noise of my pulse. A country song about a wife waiting on her man bled through. I smiled at the irony. In my line of work, nobody waits on anybody. The only goal is getting someone back to ordinary earth. Wind threaded the cracked window. My hands on the wheel remembered the other grip, easing the collective down into brownout. Fort Novasol came back in heat haze flashes, an old-school warrant officer teaching me to hear dust with my ears. Dust isn't just blindness, it's the ground speaking, the breath of earth kicked skyward by rotor blades, fine grains colliding like a stampede. You listen. You feel altitude the gauges can't admit. Maybe it was the brittle air tonight. Maybe Dad's voice knocked something loose. Either way, the memory rose like silt. I blinked, the brights merged. Behind me the backyard stayed lit, crickets stitched into laughter. Ahead, a red ribbon of taillights, the sign for the gate, and inside that gate a different language entirely, talk, LZ, fuel, time on station. Cheap hand soap and old vinyl mixed in the car. Mom would call me stubborn. Dad would say I put duty over family. The cousins would say girls should pick safer work. Those lines slid through my head like highway signs: appear, pass, leave a glow. The gatehouse came up. The guard snapped a salute. I swung into the lot. The wind on post behaves like even the air follows orders. From the asphalt to the hangar door, civilian life steamed off me like lake water lifting in sun. Somewhere, a bolt pinged on concrete, one tiny sound, and my heart fell into rhythm with the bigger machine spooling up squadron gears. Habits, the wolf calm you can't fake, Captain Hart. A voice out of the shadows, Tex, shoulders big as the doorway, 5 o'clock sandpaper on his jaw. TOC pushed a 9 line. LZ might be warm. I nodded, saving breath. Cho, our crew chief, slapped a corner-clipped checklist into my palm, and Flowers, our medic, clipped his bag to the mount like hanging a quiet life on a hook. Half a step before the skid, I paused. The coin under the liner kissed my temple, ice cold, clearing. I pictured Dad's glass midair, Mom's eyes under the lights, Ethan's careful smile. I didn't pack a grudge. I packed one job, simple and old and always new, keep somebody's chance to get home. Helmet on, strap cinched. The world shrank to a handful of motions. Switches under my fingers. The turbine found its note, another heartbeat. The BBQ smoke was gone. Only JP8 coming jet fuel, stinging the sinuses just enough to say the night would run long. North sky thick, starless. Position lights blinked. Rotor wash chased dead leaves across the line. I cocked my head, tuning the blades like a guitarist tunes strings. I didn't look back. My parents' yard sits on a different map, the part where dust never rises, where people think silence means nothing's happening. On this map, silence means everything's in place. I wrapped my hand around the stick, took one breath, and let the ground fall away. In my right ear, Tias came on, paper dry night flight copies. I answered the only way the night needs to hear. Copy. Lifting. And Clarksville shrank, under us like an argument. I didn't need to finish. The ground unspooled beneath us like a cassette on fast forward. Clarksville's streetlights stitched into shaky gold lines, then fell away as we cleared the edge of town. Wind rattled the skin. Then everything settled into the bones-deep sounds I live by, rotor blades chewing night, the turbine climbing to its steady note, harness webbing whispering tight each time I trimmed the controls. TOC's clipped voice rattled the 9 line again in my headset. Tex read back the chords. Cho green-lit doors and straps. Flowers ran a fingertip inventory tourniquets. IO needles, sealed morphine. None of us wasted long sentences beyond the checklist. We let the machine do most of the talking. Up here the air always smells like metal and a promise. I glanced through the glass out of a habit that belonged to someone else first. C4 Elena Ruiz never told me to look. She told me to listen. Fort Novosel back then was a frying pan. Someone forgot to pull off the burner. She stood behind my shoulder, hands clasped, eyes unblinking, while I pushed into my first brownout. Dust will tell you where you are, she rasped over intercom. Smoker's voice turned kind by use. Gauges tell one story. Ground tells another. In a brownout, pick the ground's story. I hated that line the first week. Dust didn't talk. It attacked, slammed the windscreen, and turned the world into a doorless gray wall. I remember my own hiss, no viz, no viz! And Ruiz's hand, heavy as rock, landing on my shoulder. Hold attitude. Trust your ears. Hear the rotor. Hear your body answer. And then, inside that grit, I started hearing what I still can't name. A different shiver that means the nose is creeping up. A hush between 2 blade beats that says the surface changed. A thin silence that warns your tail's about to kiss the earth. The first time I sat down, only slightly cockeyed, she exhaled like stubbing a cigarette in cold coffee. There, that's the thing you'll need where nobody claps. We never got to clap for her. 3 months later, they read her name at the end of an internal bulletin, lost in a sandstorm. Search unsuccessful. That day, training field dust filmed my boots. Fine grit crawled onto my tongue, bitter as regret. I put my hand on our class photo, touched her shoulder in the picture like there was heat left in it, and made a vow without words. When the night buckles like a plastic bag over the face, I will listen to ground, to the machine, to my own fear. Tex pulled me back. Headwind, slight right. I've got tree line and a dirt cut. You got any glint? I swept the edge of the windscreen. Air bone dry, stars thinned to a smear. Negative, Cho belly light. She thumbed the switch. A thin cone of white found a sheet of dust rolling even before we were close. Flowers muttered, same charm he always throws at the dark, hope it's not a kid. Dad would call what I do support, because he likes seeing blood stop under a stitch. the flatline jolt back to a neat, jagged beat. He believes what counts is what prints out. I don't hate that. I just couldn't live by it after the day I stood outside pre-med advising, read the plaque, and walked away. I called him that afternoon, heard the heavy breath when I said, I'm switching to ROC aviation. His laugh was gravel dry. Sweetheart, a bus that flies is still a bus, I said. I want to bring people home. He didn't say proud of you, he said. Don't be foolish. I never told him about day one with the 101st. When an old sergeant tapped my dust-off patch and nodded like he was sealing an oath. I never told him about range nights where JP8 flooded my lungs till I almost gagged and still grinned. Because in the rotor noise I heard the strange order, only night keeps short words, clean readbacks, tiny moves that keep a human from slipping out of his life. If he sat in the cabin, he'd see support means buckling a young dad whose hands won't stop shaking, cranking pressure till your own fingers go numb, and parking a bird where there's nothing but dust and hope. 10 out from LZ, Toast said. Tex cut me a look. You fly, I'll talk. I nodded, hands feeding the bird like a fire tender. Cho cracked the port door, wind slapped in with the dry wood smell of long-closed cupboards. Watch for lines, she said. Low poles. I pinned my eyes to the rim of darkness, hunting that thinner shadow that betrays a wire. Flowers folded a foil blanket small, like someone creasing a letter they haven't written yet. Wind shifted. I felt it before instruments confessed it. Sometimes the pilot's body is the honest censor. Below, dust started to spin wide. I didn't set down, not yet, but I opened the memory panel in my head. Don't lock your knees. Hold attitude, listen to floor vibration. Ruiz came back, not as a face, but as a stance, knees out, her shoulder pressed into mine to lend me weight. Dust is the ground's weight coming up, she used to say. You gotta be heavier than it on the inside. Another scrap of memory slid in, like a radio bleeding from a neighboring channel. Hank the vet across the street, who smells like split oak and oil, pressing a frayed dust-off patch into my palm. Keep it, he said. When you feel alone, touch it. Since last night it's been stitched under my helmet liner, a cloth anchor I don't need to touch to feel, just knowing it's there cracks a window in a tight room. LZ may be mobile, Tosi corrected. Ground element shifting southwest. Tex smirked. Of course they are. I arced us around, holding altitude stiff, as if telling a drunk friend to stand up straight. Cho stabbed a finger. Their retroreflector. 2 points 10 paces apart. They're marking. I didn't answer. I was busy listening. The rotors timbre bending as wind cut a gap, the floor's buzz changing to warn the earth isn't flat. My own voice inside dropping to that register, it finds when things get real. One Fort Novosel afternoon, I asked Ruiz why she chose MEDEVAC over a cushy instructor chair to retirement. She shrugged. I like bringing the story home, I asked. Doesn't it wear you out when nobody knows your name? She smiled, crow's feet cinched like tied rope. My name's in their heartbeat when they wake up. Some lines, once you hear them, you never give back. I checked my crew. Tex droning to ground calm as a metronome. Cho braced in the doorframe, palm on the gunner's belt. Flower's mouth shut, prayer or habit, who knows. Dad can hang his faith on plaques. We hang ours on whether someone eats breakfast tomorrow. I don't get mad when I see that split screen. I see two ways to say the same thing home. Wind shifted again. The engine cleared its throat, found the right key. Dust started speaking. In too many rooms of my life, men on porches have spoken over me. Out here, the ground speaks to me and I answer. I eased a touch of collective, held airspeed, kept the blades heavy enough without getting mean. On approach, I said. No poetry. None of us needed it, just the right weight. The vow I made to Ruiz cut a bright groove through my head. When dust talks, I listen. Tonight I added a stitch. Not for the gala, not for a bad toast. For a stranger somewhere below whose heart was missing the beat my rotor keeps. They were waiting for a story to come back. And I hate leaving anyone to die on the way home. Morning opened with cheap coffee and hot printer smell. Flight ops was the size of a waitlist, a crowded whiteboard, a wall clock running a tick fast, and a ceiling fan squeaking like it wanted to eject itself. I dotted the schedule, filling blank squares with tidy handwriting, little straight lines that, From far away, looked like a toy formation. Whittaker leaned his chair back, belly parked under a striped shirt missing a button. He lobbed a fat stack with a red binder clip. For you, Captain, logistics of support, your specialty. He pressed on support like an elevator button, hoping to stop at the floor labeled sarcasm. I took the stack without a face twitch. Years teach you to let lines like that slide off your shoulders like drizzle. Thanks, I said. I'll resequence the night crew. I sat, adjusted the chair. At the desk edge, a plastic helicopter missing one blade waited for whoever forgot it. I pushed it back and forth with one finger, the dry plastic rasping on wood like trickling sand. Whittaker smirked. You sure love these toys, I said. Toys keep adults from breaking the real stuff. My phone buzzed twice. Family group text lit up. Mom dropped the hospital gala invite with overconfident gold font. Ethan added a shy emoji. Dad wrote, dress properly. Family photos that night. I almost typed mission dependent, then didn't. I sent a single dot. Mom read fast. Wear the blue dress from last time. Your father likes that color in pictures. I looked at my combat boots, brown dust still packed in the stitching, and wondered where a blue dress fits in a photo that has no space for dust. Cho shouldered in with a crate of medical supplies, t-shirt streaked with oil. Captain, need your signature. I flipped the loadout sheety. Hemostatic gauze, tourniquets, syringes, IO needles, airways. Flowers came behind her, tired eyes over a faded ruck. He opened it and arranged each piece like a man doing a jigsaw. Every item has a house, every house has a reason. We got more mini ultrasound gel, he said. Hate running dry mid-job. I signed and felt my tiny understanding of prepared gain another ½ millimeter. Whittaker propped an elbow on his chair. Captain, curiosity. On the radio you say that 9-line thing. 9 items? Sounds hardcore. What is it really? I looked up and gave him exactly enough. 9 pieces of info, I said. Location, frequency, number of casualties, priority, type of injury, LZ, security, marking, obstacles, and extras. Read it right, we get there faster. Read it wrong. We still come, your night just gets longer. He clap-snapped like a joke. Sounds like support. Wink, I laughed. Yep. Support people not dying. A young sergeant jogged in, sweat beading at his hairline. Captain, wind model shifted brownout advisory for the sand pit area. He dropped a red stamped memo. I nodded, told him to post a copy at the door, then to Cho extra dust landings this afternoon. 2 reps wake the body up. Cho nodded, face nailed into calm. Outsiders call it training. The body calls it rehearsing a word you already own. Hold attitude. Noon, the chow hall was noisy. I sat with Flowers. His lunch looked like elementary school meatballs and white bread. He flipped his phone to show me the new tabby he'd adopted Simba for easy yelling. Put him in an old medic kit, he grinned. Disinfectant smell knocks him right out, I asked. Why Simba? He shrugged. Thinks he's a lion. Sleeps like a cat. We ate in rare quiet. Outside heat and blue sky. In here, a slice of white bread counted as a kind of piece, Mom called. I hesitated, then picked up. Her voice was sun-dried dish towel soft. Got a minute? Your father wants the doctors at the family table. They adore Ethan. You'll come, smile for pictures easy. A spoon clinked against a pot on her end. I saw our kitchen in my head. Spice jars sorted by color, towels hung just so. Everything clean the way fear of judgment is clean. I'll come if I'm not flying. You always have an if, she sighed. You're like the wind. I wanted to say some nights I am the wind, lift the dust, then tuck it back to sleep. At home that line would sound like theater. I said, I'll try. Afternoon, we towed the bird into sun. Tech's toe nudged a wheel to square with the painted line. I climbed in and walked the switches. 1 more brownout rep, I said. Make it reflex. Cho cracked the little vent. Heat poured in like a kiln's breath. We lifted, skimmed the grass, and eased into the seeded dust pit. I landed with ears more than eyes to remind my body of floor rattle, my hands of the soft that belongs in the collective when the ground starts talking. Down and stable, Tex stuck his head in. Don't forget the gala tomorrow. I tilted my helmet. I remember the mission. Toward evening I hit the barracks, hung the helmet, my fingers finding the stitched-in dust-off patch Hank gave me. I showered, hot needles pounding fuel and metal off my skin. Phone lit Ethan DM, don't let dad get to you. Come if you can. If not, I get it, I answered. Handle your spotlight. Next round mine. He sent a guilty smile emoji. I stared at the screen, remembered his 3-tap shoulder pad in the backyard steady, metered, like checking a pulse. My brother isn't the problem, the echo chamber of misassigned pride is. I dozed and dreamed dust could talk, said it rose just to kiss our white position light, then settled like ash. Dusk when I woke. I checked my go bag, counted the pieces as if never counted, locked my door, walked a hallway that still smelled like new paint. On the steps, Hank leaned on his pickup with a tin box. He didn't speak, he handed it over. Inside an old dust-off challenge coin, edges worn thin. Tuck it in your helmet, he said. When you feel alone, you'll remember we sat there too. I slid it under the liner next to the patch. Metal and cloth do the job better than pep talks. Back on the flight line, ramp lights blinked, the wind brushed the grass like a palm across a back. Talk 9-line incoming. Tex at the step with a half grin. Again. Cho already on the belts. Flowers clipped the med bag to its hook. I slid the helmet on. The coin pinged a soft kiss at my temple. Everything that belonged today fell off me without a sound. In the cabin the turbine climbed, the blades found their cadence, and the world shrank to a few short words: check, clear, lift. Outside, the runway stretched like a promise I'm bound to keep. If someone asked, what's your job? I wouldn't say support or hero. I'd say bring the story home. Last night's story wasn't finished. The next chapter was waiting in a patch of dirt where the dust had already started to form its own accent. I wrapped the stick, breathed once, and let the ground slip away. Tosie in my ear, dry as paper, night nurse copy. I gave the only answer the dark ever asks for. Copy lifting. And everything that was day folded shut behind us so night could get back to work. The kneeboard map looked like the hide of a wild thing, grid lines, sweat stains, neon ink bled into the folds. I planted a finger on the updated chords, traced a clean arc toward a stubby bridge, then tapped for text to update. Keep the headwind, I said. Don't trust the nose, trust the dust. Text smirked. Sounds like Ruiz. I didn't smile. Her name in someone else's mouth always cinched a knot in my throat. Night nurse, LZ marked IR, 2 chem sticks. Toast crackled. Possible power lines on the east edge. Cho copy. Port door set. She slid the latch and cracked the door, wind knifed the cabin, hot JPH shouldering in like heated metal. Flowers crouched low, webbing slung, mask checked, a tourniquet strapped to his thigh like instinct. Darkness isn't one shade, it's a map. Blotted timber, a paler smear of dirt, a lonely blink of retroreflector. I eased down, nose a hair low, waiting for the dust to speak. The radio bled a young voice. Strangled one urgent litter chest, we're losing him. Flowers held his breath for exactly 1 beat, then under it, please, not a kid. He always says it his charm against the dark. 2 IR sticks winked into a shaky L, warped by wind. Got it, Tex called. I flew the approach, held altitude, muscles slid into their own memory, like sitting in a chair carved to your bones. Dust started to lift, first a breath, then a curtain dragged across the eyes. The frequency needle quivered, then sagged like it wanted a nap. I stopped scanning the panel and listened. Floorboards changed, whisper surface below wasn't flat, ribbed like tire ruts. Tiny correction, feather a little power. Cho leaned out and shouted into intercom, power line right, low. I couldn't see it, but I trusted her voice and the doorframe's faint tremor. A left nudge on the nose. Tex's hand hovered where it belonged, not grabbing, not coaching. Below, the earth kept talking in a language nobody translates. Dust grains colliding, rotor answering, air being pushed back. A wind curl snapped, dust bloomed like fireworks. For a blink the world went solid gray, every edge erased. My back locked, shoulders dropped. Right hand held the stick like a wrist you won't let hit the floor. I remembered Ruiz laying 2 fingers on that wrist in the sim, don't squeeze, hold. I didn't squeeze, I held. The bird hung on thought. Distant gunfire, Cho said, bone dry. The words slid past like a pebble into a pond. We weren't here to fight, our job was grab and go before anyone decided who deserved bullets. Hover, hover, Tex coached. I sank half a breath. Let the dust swallow the door. Two human shapes swam up in IR glow like overgrown fireflies that lost the swarm. Ground, Cho barked. I sat down by feel before sight let the cabin kiss the earth closed-lipped. Dust still hammered, but lower. Flowers popped the latch and sprang like a compressed spring. His voice braided into the wind 2 hands. Hold pressure? I kept the ship at a predictable tremor. If I missed, the people behind me would pay in skin and blood. 2 taps on my shoulder chose good and she vanished after him. Tex scanned my second set of eyes and, if needed, my steadier left hand. From the dust fringe a filthy jacket waved wild. Flowers and Cho hauled a body to the litter. Torn shirt, pink foam on the lip. Not a kid. Not lighter. Sucking chest, Flowers said, already kneeling, slapping a seal. He pressed a small hiss, breath fought its way back like an unkinked hose. Ready, Cho yelled. I didn't answer. The aircraft answered by not moving beyond the shakes it's allowed. Line, Tex shouted. The pole flickered in and out of the dust like a trick ghost. The trick was real. I eased the ship exactly 1 learned notch, no panic, no extra, no less. Tail cleared, blades cleared. Load. 3 hard knocks on the frame. Foil blanket over the chest. Flowers' face mud-streaked to the whites of his eyes. I raised collective and felt the ship grow lighter than the earth's grip. Dust tugged. I stayed heavier on the inside Ruiz's rule. Skids broke contact. My body let out a click of slack, like a bow just loosed. Climb, climb, Tex murmured, soothing a child. I climbed just enough, nosed away from the east wires like Cho called it. Night nurse airborne, Tex told Ta. Fast route to receiving. TOC kicked back the closest military hospital. I nodded without meaning to and pushed power to where the ship didn't complain. Below, the dust gave up and went back to being a crowd that learned to part. In back, Flowers counted like a carpenter breathing okay cold line going in. Short, square sentences. Cho held pressure added weight, laced straps into hooks like tying down a net. I cut a glance to the cabin mirror. The patient's eyes cracked a thin line just enough to show me a story, choosing whether to stop or go on. I didn't say you're okay. I don't get to promise that. I did the one thing that is my lane, kept our inside weight, greater than the dust's. We crossed timber, tin roofs, a strip of dark road. Night stretched long as a hospital corridor. Tex cleared air and freaks. Tilos patched the pad. The pad lights glowed modest and warm like a door left open. I landed for those lights, for the oath of the trade, for Ruiz, for Hank's patch cold under my liner. Final, I called. The pad's white dots ran a straight row. I eased and set us down like putting a secret on a table. Cho blew the door, Flowers popped the litter. Outside, the receiving team was ready, patient gone in a smooth chain of hands. Flowers jogged beside, rapid-firing the chest hole, the seal time, the response. A woman in scrubs brushed my forearm in passing, almost by accident, the kind of thank you only tired people trade. I nodded without catching her face. We each had our stretch of road. With the cabin empty, a thin blend of blood and JP8 hung in the air, a reminder we'd just skimmed the seam between living and dying. Tex exhaled. Pretty. Not me, he meant the team, the ship, the night not betraying us. Cho slammed the door and flopped into the jump seat, sweat tracing her temple. She snorted. Those lines were mean. Flowers climbed back in, stripped gloves, eyes red but steady. Okay until other hands take over. He says at every handoff like the last rock on a levee. Night nurse available, Tex keyed. Tios came back, paper dry standby. I cracked one ear cup to let my ear breathe and touched the liner where Hank's dust-off patch and coin rest. The metal was calmly cold. I thought of my parents' backyard, the brisket cold now, Mom probably boxing my plate, Dad maybe done being loud, Ethan answering nice questions. Out here we have only one question. Will we be in time next round? I stared across the pad. The settled dust lay on the grass like a tired animal. I took us up and back into dark work. There are parts of my life where no one claps. Out there, the rotor claps for us by refusing to stop. And like most nights, I stood where that applause is loudest. The little road into the neighborhood was soft dark, like an old quilt. A few kitchen windows still glowed, warm light breathed through sheer curtains. I parked under a bare maple, killed the engine, and sat until the last rotor buzz leaked out of my ears. When I opened the door, Wood smoke and caramelized sugar drifted on the breeze, the smell of home, the kind you'll never find in a hangar. The miller's door swung open before I could knock. Louise stood there with a peach print potholder, cheeks pink from the oven. "Peach cobbler's hot," she ordered. "Get in here." I didn't have time to argue before Hank filled the doorway behind her, old red flannel, collar frayed, blue eyes that understand dust better than maps. He tipped his chin. "In. Let me hear what the night smells like." In the kitchen, steam off sugar and grease curled under the pendant light and stuck to my hair the way fine grit sticks to plexiglass. Louise set a deep bowl in front of me, scooped cobbler so the peaches rose under a crisp lid. "Nobody talks on an empty stomach," she decreed, pouring a glass of cold milk. The first spoonful was hot enough to numb my tongue. My body, still coiled from the flight, loosened knot by knot like a rope coming free in the right order. Hank propped a hip against the sink and clicked a lighter. "Doesn't smoke anymore, just likes the sound." "Catch any power lines?" he asked, voice level as tap water. "Caught one," I said, jumped out of the dust like it knew it was important. He nodded slow, the way you nod at an old enemy finally showing its face. "Power lines are a different religion. You don't convert M. You just stay out of their sight." Louise shot him a look. "Let the girl eat." She pulled a chair and leaned forward the way good listeners do. "You going home tonight?" she asked. I shook my head. "Shower, sleep a bit. Then the gala." I said the word like a benign but chronic condition. Louise flicked her hand like shooing a fly. "People love gowns and lights. Fine. Tomorrow will they remember who buckled the straps?" "No, and that's okay." I laughed, spoon halfway up. She went on, "Softer family is whoever opens the door when you knock, not whoever claps when the lights come on." I didn't say yes, ma'am. I just took another bite and felt the tired set in my ribs melt like sugar. My phone buzzed. "Mom." I looked at Hank. He gave me the answer. "This house is blast-proof. Look." I swiped. Mom's voice entered the kitchen like a different scent, clean, a little tight. "Can you hear me? Be early tomorrow. Your father wants family photos before guests. Wear the blue dress. And if you meet Dr. Welsh, remember to introduce yourself as working in aviation." "All right." She stretched industry like taffy. I stared at my fingers, sticky with cobbler, and said slow, "I'll come if there's no call." On her end, a long breath turned into a comma. "There's always an if. Sweetheart, your father says too much sometimes. Don't hold it against him." 100 replies about too much crowded my mouth. I swallowed them. "I'll be there." Dad texted right after. "They're honoring Ethan with a very moving helicopter story. Don't be late." I stared at the line until my smile cooled. I could sketch the beats of that very moving story. Sand night, someone dying, rotor pounding a brown sky. I shut my eyes and felt Ruiz lay her hand on my shoulder from a place with no roof. My lips formed a sentence I didn't send. "Don't use our dust so somebody else gets the applause." I kept the phone quiet, like holding the ship steady in the haze. Bad text. Hank didn't look up. He's got the antenna only radio guys grow. "They'll tell a story that sounds like ours," I said, and hand the trophy to someone else. "I'm supposed to stand at the edge of the photo so the frame looks full." Hank nodded like a vinyl record. He's heard 100 times. Came back around. He opened a small blue tin, set it in front of me. "Open it." I popped the lid. Inside lay a curved, frayed dust-off patch, threads silvered thin. "Yours," Hank said. "I want it back in the sky." I looked up. "I'm afraid I'll tear it for good." "Things worn smooth by use are lucky," he said without missing a beat. I lifted the patch to my nose. Old cloth, faint ghost of sweat. I pictured it beneath my helmet liner, exactly where my temple brushes every time I lower my head. Louise tugged a sewing kit from a drawer. "Stitch it now," she said. "We've got light. We've got someone to hold the lamp." She clicked on a small desk lamp, warm yellow poured across the wood. I pulled my helmet from the bag, peeled the liner, marked the spot with a fingertip. Hank slid into the chair beside me, pinching the edge of fabric steady, the way you hold skin while a doctor stitches. Each pass of the needle whispered through the cloth like a secret. Louise rested a palm between my shoulders for exactly one breath, just long enough for my back to remember somebody was there. "The gala," Hank said. "What are you going to say if they push you into the crowd?" I kept the stitches even and tight. Nothing. Show up, stand, walk out, draw a line. No lawsuits. Louise snorted. Remember, a fence, not a wall. And no chalk lines either. I smiled. Yes, ma'am. Hank added, eyes still on the patch. If they read a story in the wrong room, let the right person say the right line. Doesn't have to be you. He poured himself water and drank it like whiskey. I tied the last knot and bit the thread. The patch lay snug under the liner, frayed edge tucked beneath new stitches. I tried the helmet on. The touch at my temple felt like a cool fingertip, not uncomfortable, just clear, a nightly reminder you are not alone. Louise clapped once. Pretty. Hank lifted his chin, oddly pleased. Now one more thing. He fished a worn dust-off challenge coin from his pocket, edges smoothed. Don't show it off. Let it talk to the patch. I grinned, slid the coin alongside, and heard the faint ting as metal kissed cloth, the sound of a glass nudged before a toast. Phone again. Ethan, you free? If tomorrow feels wrong, I'll tell the MC to swap the story. I think they borrowed it. A thread attached in the right place pulled a few grams off my chest. No need, I typed. Just remember who's who. When they clap your name for your work, I'm happy. When someone else borrows ours, I'll leave the table before the applause ends. He shot back, fast deal. Next time I'll be the one taking your picture. I looked at that line a long time. In my head, tomorrow's grass field warmed in the sun. Louise cleared dishes. Want to take cobbler with you? I nodded. She wrapped a foil pan and wrote on top with a marker for Sydney, keep warm. I took it. It was warm in my hands, the kind of warm that says someone planned for you to be late. At the door, Hank stood blocking the wind, a veined hand landing on my shoulder for 1 second. When dust talks, you listen. When people talk wrong, you smile. He didn't hug me. We're not every time huggers. Some touches land with the weight of a good landing. On the porch, wind slid along the boards. Dry leaves spun at the step like a lazy rotor. I tucked the cobbler under my arm, the helmet swung. The coin tapped the liner in time with my steps. Streetlights stitched a thin gold path back to the barracks. Inside my room, it was cool and dark. I set the cobbler on the counter, hung the helmet. My fingers went straight to the liner where the patch lived. Tomorrow I'll go to the gala, not to earn claps or steal a story. To draw a line small, straight between the people I love and the things I won't allow anymore. Lines like that don't need speeches. They need a blue dress, a nod, and when the minute strikes, a quiet step away from the table. I killed the light and fell back on the bed. In the dark, the coin and patch on the wall felt like two half-closed eyes. I shut mine and let my body slow until sleep crept in like sand. Right before I went under, I saw Ruiz at the edge of the haze. She didn't speak. She nodded. That's how people who don't need applause say good luck. I slept knowing tomorrow I'd balance a bright room and a windy LZ the way I always do, by listening for the true story. The hotel lobby shone like the surface of a pool with the lights flipped on. Wine-red carpet, chandeliers dripping glass drops, a violin working the same fundraiser melody I've heard in every room like this. I walked slow. The heels Louise's, borrowed, clicked a rhythm that wasn't rotor cadence. The blue dress fit the way Mom likes, back high enough to pass inspection. Under the fabric, my knees still remembered how to hold steady in dust. I carried the camera Mom handed me, the new leather strap rubbing my neck, nothing like the cracked vinyl in a cockpit. Mom windmilled me over to the table dead center. There you are. She pinched my elbow to angle me just so, the way she turns a vase toward the light. Dad turned, vest riding tight over his stomach, smile wide like a man who's shaken more hands than he's hugged. He kissed the air somewhere near my cheek and murmured through his teeth, "Tonight is Ethan's. Stand on the right, wait for the family photo." I nodded, photographer following a floor plan. Ethan slipped out from behind a step and repeat with the hospital logo, tie a touch crooked, eyes warm tired. He hugged me for real, not a cheek peck. You being here helps. I grinned. Thought you were born helped. Spoon on glass, tiny chimes. The MC black tux, side part hair, from radio voice asked everyone to take their seats. The lights dipped 1 notch. On the big screen, a close-up gloved hands, a drop of blood hitting a stainless tray, then a hard cut to a dark clearing, dust lifting like fog. The narration rolled out rich and smooth, a sandstorm somewhere far away, a helicopter brave enough to drop in like a miracle. The room fell quiet, then oohed on cue textbook timing. I knew this edit. Spliced out of stories other people told about nights we lived. It braids a dozen nights into 3 minutes that fit the program. I stood still, palm on the camera. My hand remembered deck vibration. Mom squeezed my fingers, whispering don't take the bait without saying it. Dad's chin went up, pride by muscle group. When the video cut to white hospital lights and sliding doors, the MC lifted his voice. And tonight, we honor a man who has saved countless lives, who faced the darkness and brought hope home. Please welcome Dr. Ethan Hart. Applause hammered the room like a storm on a tin roof. Ethan startled half a beat. He didn't know this script, then stepped into it, because that's how stages flow. He bowed, took the torch-shaped crystal. Dad hollered bravo, loud enough for the next table. Mom looked at me, her smile both proud and mismatched, like stitching 2 dish towels with the wrong pattern together. The MC handed Ethan the mic. He kept it short and honest, never taking a slice that wasn't his. Somewhere out there, somebody put a helicopter into dust last night. I'm the one who receives them on the other end. Thank you to the people who keep them arriving. A few heads nodded, most eyes stayed on the trophy. Family of Dr. Hart, the photographer called. Mom nudged my back. I stepped where she's coached me to step, angled in, shoulders turned, chin down, one click. Flash burst like staged lightning. The room smelled like expensive perfume braided with chilled white wine. In one strobe I saw Ruiz at the edge of the riser, hands clasped, a private smile nobody else would catch. Flash dark, she was gone the way dust clears under a rotor. One more, the photographer said. I glanced at Ethan. He closed a hand on my wrist, a tiny squeeze. You good? I nodded. Some nights good means knowing exactly when you're going to walk away. After photos, the auction started up. Tennessee landscape painting, a cabin weekend, dinner with our honorary paddles lifted to the MC's practiced enthusiasm. Dad leaned into my ear. When it's our table, smile and wave. I studied the horizontal crease across his forehead like a hyphen between worlds. I said, soft, I'll be just outside the frame. His brows bunched. Don't make a scene. I answered, I'm choosing my place. Mom pressed the camera into my hands. Picture of your father and Ethan by the trophy. I raised the viewfinder. Clean composition, easy light. Click. Nice shot, nice like a well-set table. I passed the camera back, told Ethan, good job, Doc. He heard the double-meaning praise and goodbye. He winked light enough. I closed my smile, set the camera beside a flower arrangement, and took a step back. No one tugged me. The room was busy with the MC's rhythm. The side hall was cool as a creek in August. A mirror threw me back, blue dress, hair in a neat bun, bare collarbone, where a challenge coins chain would sit if I wore it loud. My fingers lifted to my temple without thinking, skin, remembering the pressure point of the dust-off patch under my helmet liner at home. A sliver of private sky, even in borrowed shoes with a camera strap around my neck. I aimed for the side exit to call Hank and say, done. Shoe leather clicked on marble. A small group entered, not loud, but the crowd parted around them the way water yields to a bow. At the center, Major General Thompson, evening dress uniform, not a chest full of hardware but every ribbon placed like a straight nail. He moved unhurried, eyes smiling the tired smile of a man who said, hello, more than he's slept. He scanned the lobby like reading a map and then stopped on me. Not for the dress, for the way I hold space like I'm protecting an invisible cabin. I know that look from any set of clothes. Pilots find pilots by posture. He gave me a nod, small, the kind one aircrew gives another. I nodded back, arms loose the way they hang after a clean landing. The folks behind him murmured about remarks, about donors. Thompson didn't watch them. His gaze drifted to the ballroom where the MC was telling a story I've heard to death. General, a coordinator popped up like rain on a drought day. What an honor. You're just in time for our remarkable young physician. We were, hand sweeping toward the stage. Thompson tipped his head, then smiled with that practiced courtesy of a man who can wait a sentence out. His eyes hadn't left me, not nosy. The kind of eye contact that says I see you. I didn't step closer. The line tonight was no reenactments, but another line kept me still if the right sentence needed saying. It didn't have to be me, Hank's rule, but it didn't have to be someone else either. I met his eyes, breathed just enough, ready to leave before I got sentimental about any rescue. "Captain," he said it low, no volume, no rank padding it. I stopped mid-step. The word landed between my shoulders like Ruiz's hand at Fort Novosul, unshowy, permissionless. I turned. He didn't ask for my name. He didn't need it. At night, we recognize each other by different tags. Last night, he said, still quiet. Brownout was thick. Not a question, just setting a true thing on the table to see who moves it. I didn't smile. "Yes, sir," one syllable that carried JP8 into a room of Pinot Grigio. The organizers flocked, begging him inside. "Just a few words, General." "We're at the emotional peak, be amazing if." I stepped half aside, same as yielding right of way in the pattern. Thompson passed me, paused, and tilted his head to the handler, "Give me a minute." Then he angled toward the ballroom. I knew what he was about to do before he did it. Not because I needed a fix, because that story, whoever was holding the mic had borrowed our dust and not paid the weight. If someone was going to set the scale so a stranger could eat breakfast tomorrow, that was the right work. I held my ground, not for applause, for order. Inside, the MC hit dropped in like a miracle one more time. Thompson stepped onto the carpet line. His hand opened the way men do when they've given orders long enough to skip the shout. I didn't watch the rest. My egress was the rear door to the right, where the night waited like a quiet teammate. I turned and walked. My palm touched the steel handle just as the ballroom behind me went half a beat, still the kind of tiny silence only people who intercoms hear. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see who held the mic to know the first sentence out of his mouth. I only needed this tonight. I left at the right time. If somebody in there finally aimed applause at the right heads, great. If not, I still had tomorrow's field of grass. The wind would speak the true language. The liner patch would stamp my temple like an old seal, and I'd remember I always have an exact place to stand inside the dust, just heavier than it, so someone else still gets home. My hand was still on the steel door handle when the ballroom's noise dipped like someone turning down an invisible knob. The hush had that intercom quality right before a command. I'd meant to finish the step out when another sound arrived, shoes on carpet, then stop, a clean baritone over the PA before we continue. I need 3 minutes. Not the MC. I half turned and saw Thompson under the chandelier's edge, no mic in his hand, carrying the room like he didn't need one. Nobody argues with a stance like that. He didn't start with a name. He started with a crew. With a pilot holding a ship steady in dust no one else would ever see. With a medic counting breaths like strings on a guitar. With a crew chief leaning into a doorframe to find a power line darker than the dark. "Last night," he said, "a dust-off team did what dust-off teams do: show up, stay, and go so strangers get another chance to come home." He paused exactly 1 beat. "They call the aircraft commander by an unofficial call sign, night nurse." I went still. Not from shame, not from thrill. From the right-sized fairness in the air, the kind that smells a little like JP8. On stage, Ethan turned. In the far mirror, I saw his head tilt, his mouth close, his eyes open the way they do when someone flips on an or light. A coordinator craned his neck to reclaim the program, but Thompson raised a palm, small move. Enough. He kept it short, no operation names, no body counts, no press conference. He set 1 piece of weight on the glass tabletop. Then he turned his head, found me in the doorway crowd like an IR marker in a brownout. Captain Hart, front and center. He didn't raise his voice. The room heard. I walked toward the light the way you slide a bird into a marked LZ, no theater, no ducking. Chandelier warmth wrapped me in that fake crystal heat. I didn't see Ruiz in my periphery. I saw Hank in his kitchen doorway, hand on a blue tin, saying, "Let the right person speak." I stopped beside Thompson. He tipped his head. "Thank you for last night," I said. "My crew thanks you, sir." He nodded. For 2 people who know, that beat replaces a standing ovation. He faced the room again and left them one line worth keeping. If you clap for a Dust Brown story tonight, remember, it's a crew. He handed the mic back, stepped down. No drum roll. No spotlight. A little weather passed through the room anyway, grass, shivering under wind, people's gaze shifting a click. Mom pressed fingers to her lips, tears threatening the mascara she'd planned. Dad didn't slow clap like in movies. He just stood straighter. I came off the step, no photos, no bouquet. Ethan cut across 2 rows and hugged me short, tight. "I'm sorry," he said into my ear. "Not for me, for every time they told your story in the wrong room," I said. "No one owes me an apology. I just need you to know where your part begins and ends." He nodded, smile featherlight. "I do. Next time they want a helicopter story, I'll tell them call night nurse." As we cleared the aisle, Dad arrived. He didn't hug me. He set his hands at his sides like a man parsing old drill. His mouth opened and closed like a door afraid to stick. "Sydney," he started, voice smaller than I remember. "I said too much last night." He isn't good with apology nouns. He uses verbs. "Tomorrow, if you're free, meet me at the old field outside town. The scrub grass one. I want to hear you talk about dust." He underlined here like a man practicing a new word. I nodded. "I'll come." Mom touched my arm the way Louise handles a hot plate. "You look beautiful in that dress," she said, nothing sentence, a dam against crying. "Borrowed," I smiled. She exhaled, smiled back, then pressed the camera into my hand. "One picture, your father and Ethan, and you can leave early." She'd learned leave early instead of stay to the end. I snapped 3 quick frames, handed the camera over. Ethan whispered, "Go. See you tomorrow." I nodded. At the carpet's edge, Thompson shook my parents' hands and said a sentence not meant for the minutes. "Your daughter kept a lot of men with a chance to get home." Dad nodded like it was an order, not a compliment. I turned out of the ballroom again, shoulders lighter. Violin reclaimed its old melody in the hall. Cologne drifted like machine rain. Something had changed, not the whole room, the axis in my chest. I texted Hank, "All good." Right voice said the right line. He sent 2 words, "Good. Sleep." I smiled. In the parking lot, city wind is not post-wind less disciplined, knows its alleys. I slid into the driver's seat, kicked off the heels, let my feet return to actual size. The blue dress pooled still across my knees. I drove through streets slick with light, radio off. In the quiet, I pictured the dust-off patch under my helmet liner and the coin's private ting sounds not built for crowds. I didn't need the speech again. I needed tomorrow a field of grass, an old man with a horizontal crease practicing the word here. Turning toward post, my phone buzzed a 2-word Tausi text, "Stand by." Not a tasking, just the habit of the trade. I blacked the screen and let it sit like a mantra. Tomorrow I'll get there before sunset. I'll talk to Dad about dust like an honest friend. It isn't out to get you. It just asks if you're heavy enough on the inside. If he asks why I chose a rotor over a white coat, I won't preach. I'll say the line Ruiz laughed at. "When I first tried it, I like bringing the story home." The rest, whether this is reconciliation or just understanding, doesn't need a verdict tonight. I pulled a breath that tasted faintly like imaginary JP8. The city dropped behind. The post road went dark, straight, with fewer signs. I held the wheel with the hand that knows the stick and drove back to the only place in my life where silence means everything is exactly where it belongs. Grass at the makeshift LZ brushed my ankles, burnt gold like the sugar crust on Mom's Thanksgiving creme brulee. I pulled up on the dirt edge, killed the engine, and let the metal quiet itself. High overhead, a trainer circled, its rotor thinned into fishing line. I lifted my helmet, no radio, just letting the stitched dust-off patch kiss my temple, then hung it from the rear view. Out here, things should be still before anyone speaks. Dad rolled in a little late, his old pickup crawling to a stop a few paces away. He climbed down, hands in pockets, back straight with the muscle memory of a man who used to salute by the book. We looked at each other 1 beat longer than usual. He went first, like a guy bench pressing his past. "Last night I heard something different than what I've been saying." I nodded. He pointed at the flattest stretch. "We played ball here when I was a kid. Not a landing zone. Let's call it one today." We walked into the grass. The ground was soft, Our shoes left shallow tracks. Dad rubbed his palms together and blew out a breath. Tell me about the dust. What is it? I pinched a stem and twisted it between my fingers. Dust is the ground's weight lifting when the rotor pushes down, I said slow, like reading an old line aloud. It isn't against you. It just asks if you can hold the ship in the right attitude. If you panic, it eats you. If you're heavier than it on the inside, it lies down. He squinted, not doubting memorizing. And fear, he asked. I smiled. Always there. That's the seatbelt for your head. He went quiet. Wind combed the grass with a raincoat whisper. Then he pivoted. I always thought saving lives meant putting your hand on blood and watching it stop. Something you can see. He looked away, then back, the sentence changing lanes midstream. I don't see you do it, so I judged it wrong. He didn't apologize with the word sorry. He put the reason on the table and slid it my way. I exhaled. I didn't tell you either. A lot of it doesn't get told. And if I tell it, I'm afraid I'll start living for claps. I toed the dirt. A puff jumped and fell right back down. Last night he tried again. That General Thompson said something I didn't think I'd hear. His eyes narrowed. About the crew. I nodded. Nobody does this alone. His shoulders dropped half an inch, like a new muscle finally found its work. Then when I raised a glass and ran my mouth, I walked off the crew. He chuckled at himself. Our family's crew. Something in my chest tuned itself like a string coming true. If we're a crew, I said, everybody's got a station. I don't need the center seat. I need a way in and a way out so when the call comes, I leave without guilt. He nodded toward my helmet hanging in the truck. That thing heavy. I handed it over. He took it with 2 hands like a newborn. Heavy enough to remember, I said. He flipped the liner and saw the new stitches hiding the frayed patch's edge. His hands no good work. He paused half a beat. Who sewed it? Me. In Hank's kitchen. Louise held the lamp. He grinned. Hank across the street. Used to be loud. I shrugged. Now he just clicks a lighter to hear the sound. Dad traced the seam testing the border of a brand new boundary. He said. He wrapped a small thing out of a handkerchief and set it in my palm, a scuffed silver whistle, mouthpiece worn smooth. Captain of the high school team, he said. 1 blow and every kid stopped. He closed my fingers around it. When you need somebody in your own head to stop. Don't blow it out loud, just blow it in here. I'll know you're asking for space. I felt the weight of it, thought of the coin under my liner. I won't blow it at people, I said. Just for me. We walked a little farther. The sun poured lower, hand poured gold. At the field's edge, Ethan trotted up, waving the camera like a white flag. I'm late. Wind stole half his voice. He jogged the last steps, breath high, lights, perfect. Hold still. Dad laughed, rare and honest, and stepped back so he wouldn't block me. Ethan tuned his lens, clicked his tongue. Hold the helmet like that, yep. Look over your shoulder. I did. In his frame a strip of county road in the distance, a nameless sky. The shutter snicked clean as a glass tapped before a toast. 1 more, he said. You 2 together. Dad hesitated a hair, then set his hand on my shoulder. No squeeze, no steering. I didn't flinch. Wind bent a few stems into my calf. Snick, he lowered the camera, happy. Beautiful, I'll print it tomorrow. He winked. This time I'm the one taking your picture. I smiled. Deal. We sank to the field's edge. Grass rasped our pants. Dad asked about Ruiz. I told him quick and clean, the raspy-voiced warrant who taught me to hear dust. No grave to visit. Just a couple of sentences that stick to other people's skin. He listened. Hand on knee, thumb drawing a little circle like a pen that's run out of ink. Never had a teacher like that, he said. But I get what it means to stand up straight because of somebody. He looked me dead on and said the hardest line of the day. I'll learn to clap for the right people. And when you step away from a table, I'll clear the lane. The sun dropped another finger width. A trainer skimmed the far horizon, position lights winking cold, rotor ticking even. We let the sound pass through us. Nobody said, sounds like our kind of applause. In my head, that's exactly what it was. Not loud, not needy. Just the confirmation that the machine still turns, night will come, and someone else will get another chance to go home. My phone buzzed. Hank, how's the grass? I snapped a picture, sent golden. And quiet, he replied, good. Keep it that way. I pocketed the phone and touched the liner patch like saluting a private flag. Ethan fiddled with the camera strap, then pressed it into my hands. Keep it. When you're ready for a you in the right place shot, call me. I nodded. There'll be a day. Dad stood, brushed grass from his knees like brushing off an old habit. He scanned the field one more time and sighed. Sydney family dinner tomorrow. Come if you're not flying. If you are, your mom will pack your plate, and I won't say anything stupid. He looked at me like signing a paper. When you fly, that's me getting to watch somebody else come home. I bit back a grin. Deal. We headed for the trucks. The wind deepened a note, the grass changed its song. At his door he paused. I'm not asking you to tell me everything. Just when you're tired, don't be alone. I slid the coin up from the liner so he could see the silvered edge. I'm not alone, I said. I've got a crew. Hank, Louise, Ethan. And you if you stand in the right spot. He nodded, simple. I'll practice. We drove off in opposite directions. In the rear view the field shrank to a thin gold square and vanished behind a bend. On my passenger seat, last night's peach cobbler still rode in its foil pan. For Sydney, keep warm smudged by sweaty fingers. I laughed, cracked the window, and let the warm earth smell wash in like breath. Up in the distance, the trainer faded, its winks beating like a city's secret heart. Night will call again, Toss will text stand by, Dust will ask if I'm heavy enough on the inside. I promise no one but myself when Dust speaks, I'll listen, and when a loud room needs one right sentence placed in the exact right spot, I'll know where to stand close enough to love, far enough to fly. I tapped the patch, the coin clicked the liner with a tiny ting, the trade's private applause. I turned the key and eased onto the county road. Dusk streaked the windshield's edge with a thread of gold. I tied that thread to the coming dark and stitched the two halves of my life together with one calm pass of the needle. When the tires bumped a crack in the blacktop, my chest felt light, the way it does when you set a secret down on the right table. The world doesn't have to know. The people who need to already do.